Wow, that's a great way to start the meeting. Or echo chamber. Uh, I don't know if we can use a microphone like that. All right. Good. Good evening and welcome to the October 15 version of the Community Development Committee meeting. We'll start tonight's meeting the way we always do by introducing ourselves and saying who we represent. Start with Scott and land with Judy, I think.
All right, I'm Scott Counter on the county board and for District 11, which includes the town of Star Prairie, the village of Star Prairie, and the town of Stanton.
Sean Anderson, I represent District 2, which is half of the town of St. Joseph and half of Somerset Township.
Ed Schockner, District 1, half of the town of Somerset and the village of Somerset.
I'm Dan Hansen. I'm District 12, which is the northern part of New Richmond and the southern part of Star Prairie Township.
You want me to go next? Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, Judy Aktoroff, representing District 17, which is Deer Park, Forest, Silent, Emerald, Glenwood City, and Glenwood.
Ellen Denzer, Community Development Director.
I'm Ken Witt, the Interim County Administrator and Technical Solutions Expert.
Julie Peterson, Community Development.
I'd also like to point out that we have Bill Peavy, our County Board Vice Chair, in the audience. So, that being said, does anybody have any additions or corrections to the minutes from September meeting? Then they stand approved. For public comment, I have one public comment card. Is there anybody besides Mr. Shala who'd like to speak during public comment? Okay, fill one of these out and hand it to me. And anybody else who'd like to speak during public comment, just fill one of these out and bring her up. We'll let Steve go ahead and start. If you want to, you can step right up to the microphone.
Good to go?
Welcome to take the mask off if you're comfortable, just while you're presenting your...
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Stephen Shalla, and I farm with my family down in Pleasant Valley Township. Bomaz Farms is our farm name. We are a CAFO permitted farm. We're currently milking a little over 1,000 cows. And I wanted to come by, try and follow what goes on in our county and such, and saw that there was several topics the last couple months in regards to farming, water quality, CAFOs, spill response, and other things that fall into our world. So the main message that I wanted to share with you, for those of you that I haven't met or gotten to know over the years, is that we're here to help. We're here to have conversation. We're here to educate and demonstrate for you what we do and how we do it. We kind of our family prides ourselves on just being a good, honest dairy, and we really enjoy the education part and getting to share what we do, because a lot of people just don't have the opportunity to know much about it anymore. So I want to just extend an invitation that if there's any questions or anything you ever have, please reach out. I'll leave a couple of business cards with Julie if you ever care to contact us. I also wanted to say that I really appreciate the work that the staff has done and the several presentations they made on these topics. You can tell they're well informed. They've done a lot of critical thinking. These are issues that are not black and white in nature, like our Holstein cows, but they're very dynamic, and so I appreciate the effort and work that's going into these things. I wanted to share that there's a lot going on from the farming side as well when it comes to water quality, environmental stewardship. To name a few, locally we have the Western Wisconsin Conservation Council, which is still a developing organization, started a couple of years ago. That's a group of farmers primarily that kind of is banded together to work in a particular watershed, to work on strategies that work on one farm that we can duplicate on another as it relates to soil health, soil conservation, water quality, all those things. Another group that's continuing to do great work is the UW Discovery Farms. They've done many projects around the state and many right here in St. Croix County. And they continue to do really great work that helps us at the farm. A new item that's out there is the UW Systems Dairy Hub, which was recently formed. And that's a collaboration between the 3 agriculture schools within the system, Madison, Platteville, and River Falls. One of their main focuses is on environmental stewardship and namely water quality. And they came out a month or 6 weeks ago with 7 short-term high-impact projects, they're calling them, 3 of which I would say are directly related to water quality topics. So there's a lot of effort being put in there. One last highlight that was being worked through all of 2019 was a package of bills to the state legislature. There were 13 in total that the farm groups helped develop and lobbied in favor of, that all had to do with environmental quality, water quality, and those things. Those did go before the Assembly in January, and 10 of which passed unanimously. Unfortunately, the whole COVID crisis hit, and some of those topics have gotten pushed to the back burner in the Senate. They have not been taken up there. But there was a really big push to get some really big programs out there to push some of these goals that we have. So there's a lot going on from the farming perspective as it relates to environmental stewardship and water quality. So again, if you have questions, we're happy to be a resource for you, and not only on water quality as we usually talk about in this arena, but animal husbandry, animal welfare, the economics of the farming world, anything you might have questions on. So as these projects in the community development in St. Croix County develop, we look forward to being a resource, and we're hoping that things can get a little bit more back to normal, and we can even maybe have you out at the farm again next season. As Supervisor Hanson and I were talking before, we've recently done some additions, and we're happy to share and talk about what we're doing. So thank you for the time. And again, I'll leave a card here if anybody would like that.
It's really good to see you. I called Steve with one question about a month ago, and I said, do you have a moment? He said, no, I'm really, really busy. And we talked for an hour. I really appreciate you coming. And normally during public comment, we don't allow anybody to give questions or comments or whatever, so you understand how that works. But boy, we sure appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, great to see everybody.
And if anybody doesn't know Steve, between Steve and his brother-in-law, Tom Zwald, they were instrumental in helping us through the water quality, ground and surface water quality study process back in 2016. And we're still grateful to you for that. So thanks very much for coming in.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Mr. Gates and Mr. Kaufman, unless you need to leave early, we'll give you an opportunity to speak during the public hearings after we have the staff reports. So thanks for being here, guys. Okay, I'm going to open a public hearing here, rezoning from commercial to industrial for the Murtha property in the town of Bogali, and we'll ask John to come up and give us a staff report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. The first public hearing tonight is a public hearing relating to a rezoning application by John and Teresa Murtha for property in the town of O'Galley, specifically at 471 Highway 63. The request is to rezone property from C3 Commercial District to the I1 Industrial District. The purpose of the request is to go forward and get to the stage to be able to apply for a conditional use permit to construct an 8,000 square foot facility for solid waste transfer station on the parcel which they currently own. And we'll get to a location map in just a moment here. Just a little bit of background on the property. You see 47th Avenue to the north of the site. The site is highlighted in blue on the screen. State Highway 63 on the west edge. We have property to the north that's zoned commercial and is being used by N&M Transfer Company, a facility that accommodates truck transfer and redistribution of products. And then we have R2 development to the south and east. This next slide just shows a bigger picture aerial photo, I-94 to the north of the picture, State Highway 63 running south. Again, the subject parcel highlighted in red, 47th Avenue to the north. And looking in a little bit closer, you see the existing facilities on the Murtha sanitation site. The smaller building is the office for administration operations, and then the bigger building or bigger shed is for the storage of truck and repair and maintenance of vehicles. Although you are not being asked to approve any layout tonight, you're simply being asked to act on the rezoning application. We did submit a little bit of a sketch plan submitted by the developer to indicate what the project would look like. Again, 47th Avenue to the north, 63 to the west. The proposed transfer station would be an 80 by 100 foot facility closer to the eastern edge of the property. And for access, they would utilize 47th Avenue. In looking at the rezoning request under state statute, we are obligated to review state statute 66.1001, making sure that the request is consistent with the local comprehensive plan. Basically, in the town of O'Galley, they recently held a public hearing a couple of months ago to amend their comprehensive plan. Their comprehensive plan did show commercial designation for future land use. They did have a public hearing to consider the change to an industrial use designation. They did amend the language in their comp plan, and we have an excerpt taken from their July 13th, 2020 minutes. And the narrative is added to say that the industrial land use district will provide for limited areas of industrial land use along Highway 63 in the immediate area south of 47th Avenue. And again, that's the area we're looking at in question. Just a sample of the public hearing notice they had on their website. So based on the action that the town of O'Galley took to amend their comp plan language and to support industrial development in the area of Highway 63 and 47th Avenue, this rezoning request would be consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. In terms of the county comprehensive plan, we do have some policies in our document that talks about under the industrial and future industrial land use category to state that most towns delineate little to no industrial and limited expansion of industrial sites, of existing industrial sites. And because this is an existing site, our plan would support that. Our county plan also promotes the retention and expansion of existing businesses. The proposed additional use on this site of a solid waste transfer facility would be built within the current acreage of the existing parcel. And again, just to clarify tonight, you're not being asked to approve the solid waste transfer facility. That would be a separate approval process with our Board of Adjustment as a conditional use permit. Again, you're being asked to weigh the application for the potential land use on the property. A little bit of the natural resource background. We do not have any significant waterfowl areas, sensitive areas, scenic rec areas, or environmental corridors identified on this parcel. In terms of wetlands and closed depressions, there are none indicated on our mapping. At the very southwest corner of the site, we do have some limiting soils for the soil septic sanitary system. And under land use map 4, prior to the development, there was area that was considered productive farmland. There are some slopes on the site that will have to be dealt with, and that'll be analyzed in depth during the conditional use permit application process. The town board of O'Galley did review the rezoning request, so they passed the comp plan amendment back in July. They also reviewed the rezoning application. I did get copies of the recent meeting minutes that were provided after we put the packet together. But on October 6th, the Town Plan Commission recommended approval of the request. And at the October 12th town board meeting, they also recommended approval of the request. We do have some findings from the county comprehensive plan. Again, that talks about the retention and expansion of existing business in terms of goals and objectives. Making sure that development can be supported within the existing road system and infrastructure. Guiding development to locations that minimize adverse impacts to natural resources. And finding a balance of land use types throughout the county. As the project goes forward under number 7, development of the property will need to comply with our Chapter 12 sanitary provisions and Chapter 15 zoning. Community Development Committee will also recommend approval or denial of the rezoning request subject to following provisions. Rezoning and proposed use is consistent with the county comprehensive plan, consistent with the St. Croix County Natural Resource Management Plan, and the St. Croix County zoning ordinance. So essentially, the committee is being asked tonight to recommend approval of the zoning amendment, recommend approval of the zoning amendment with modifications, or recommend disapproval of the zoning amendment. Based on the staff findings, the rezoning would be consistent with the county comprehensive plan and the county natural resource plan. The town of O'Galley has also amended the town comprehensive land use plan to support the industrial development at this location. And as I recently noted, the recommendation that they had regarding the rezoning request. And it appears that the use would be consistent with and would need to comply with the sanitary provisions in the zoning ordinance. That concludes the staff overview of this request. The applicant is unable to attend the meeting tonight in person, but we did forward him the link to our Zoom. So in case there's questions, we're hoping he was able to log in successfully. Yes.
Is there anybody in the audience who has anything they'd like to say about this application? In favor of or opposed to? Is Mr. Murtha or a representative of Mr. Murtha on the phone?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me. This is Justin Murtha, Murtha Sanitation.
How you doing? You got anything you'd like to say?
I think that pretty much sums it all up, unless anybody's got any questions we can answer.
Oh, looks pretty good to us. So, thanks very much. I mean, I can't say it looks pretty good until we vote on her, but I don't have any questions. Thanks. All right, I'll close the hearing on that, and we'll move on. We'll open the public hearing to rezone 71.7 acres from R1 residential zoning district to R2 residential zoning district in the northeast and northwest 1/4, the southeast 1/4, section 31, township 31 north range, 18 west, town of Star Prairie, pursuant to chapter 15.545 of St. Croix County zoning ordinance. And Mr. Hilgers will give us a staff report.
The second public hearing tonight before the committee is also a rezoning application that was submitted by Philip Valancourt. Specifically, this property entails 71.70 acres in the town of Star Prairie, bounded by River's Edge Trail on the south and Raleigh Road on the west. The applicant has applied to rezone the property to the R2 residential district in order to accommodate a major residential subdivision, which under county code is defined as 5 or more lots. The R1 district, which it's currently in, allows residential development at a density of 1 unit per 10 acres and does not allow major subdivisions. The R2 district allows residential development with a minimum lot size of 1.5 acres and no density limit. And again, that's a little bit of a change under our new zoning code. Our minimum lot size went down to 1.5 acres. But just as a reminder, our subdivision code does allow lots to go down to 1.5 acres with a 2-acre lot average. Just some general features of the property. The subject property is shown with the red arrow, bounded by blue on the attached map. To the south and west, we have property that is used by the Apple River tubing and camping property that's zone C1 and C3. And then to the north, we have parcels and properties and lots that are zoned R2, which is single-family major subdivision development. This is just an aerial photo of the property, panned out a little bit further, subject property identified in red. We have the Apple River property to the south. We have the subdivision to the north, terminating at 90th Street, and we have some single-family development to the east of the property with Highway 64, Raleigh Road to the west, and River's Edge Road on the south. Again, what we ask for from developers is to show us at least a concept layout. Again, you're not being asked to approve the concept layout, but it's just to give the committee an idea of what's being contemplated at this site. It'd be a major subdivision of approximately 18 lots. Again, citing state statute, rezoning requests, when being reviewed, does need to comply with Wisconsin State Statute 66-1000.1. When we took a look at the Town of Star Prairie Comprehensive Plan, the property in view here is pointed with the orange arrow highlighted in blue. The Town of Star Prairie Comprehensive Plan language identifies this property as rural residential, shown by the yellow. Comprehensive plan language regarding to rural residential talks about medium to high density development with small lot rural development that is generally comprised of existing traditional residential subdivisions and new major subdivisions. And that is a little bit different from property just to the east that they designate as mixed rural and conservation design residential. So from the future land use map perspective of the town plan, the rezoning application would be consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. We also took a look at the St. Croix County comprehensive plan. Again, the subject property is shown in blue with the orange arrow pointing to it. The St. Croix County future land use plan designates this property as residential. County comp plan language states that the primary intent of this classification is to identify areas suitable for residential development. Areas included lands that are delineated as existing residential properties or vacant platted areas. In addition, undeveloped land has been designated for residential development where subdivision expansion is likely to occur. Under the county comp plan land use designation, the preferred housing unit density in this district indicates 1 unit per 2 acres. So again, that would support major subdivision development. So from that perspective, the rezoning application would be consistent with the county's future land use plan. Again, we took a look at some of the natural resources of the property. We do have an environmental corridor that's identified on the parcel, primarily due to the substantial wetland complex on the western portion of the site. It's also identified as a waterfowl protection area. The parcel is also identified to have some closed depressions and wetland areas. If and when development moves forward, these areas would be regulated by the Federal Clean Water Act, as well as Wisconsin Administrative Rules 103 from the state of Wisconsin. So they would have to comply with rules that regulate the impact of those areas. And then we also show a map that shows areas of sand deposits and possible gravel deposits. There are some steep slopes that are shown in the darker shades of rust color here that'll have to be analyzed during the platting process. And we do have a portion of our land division code that discusses slopes and how they can be impacted. The Town Board of Star Prairie has recommended approval of this rezoning request. We've attached a letter to the packet that was dated September 9th, 2020 from the town. Again, we cite a number of policies from our housing goals and objectives and our land use goals and objectives. Again, that talks about the need for supplies of developable land for housing, encourage housing development to be economically efficient in terms of relationship to services, facilities, and infrastructure, and that development in the county be consistent with the character of the surrounding neighborhoods, countryside, and terrain. So again, looking at applicable statutes and criteria, looking at the county comprehensive plan or natural resource management plan to make sure we have codes in place to protect slopes and natural areas, and then also looking at our zoning ordinance. We weigh those against the recommendation. Tonight, the committee is being asked to recommend approval of the zoning amendment with modifications, or recommend disapproval of the zoning amendment. Reviewing the applicable land use plans and the future land use plan maps from both the town and the county, and based on staff findings, we have determined that the rezoning is consistent with the county comp plan. It's also consistent with the Town of Star Prairie comprehensive plan, and that we would recommend approval of the request. It would appear that the use is consistent with and comply with standards in Chapter 12 sanitary that they would need to have reviewed and approved, Chapter 13 land division, not only of the county but of the town as well, and then Chapter 15 zoning ordinance. And then in your packet on page 46 is a copy of the correspondence from Star Prairie. And that concludes the staff overview.
Thanks, John. At this time, we'll ask for public comments, and we had two people who wanted to go. Who'd like to come up to the microphone and speak? Just give your name and address, and then what you'd like to say.
Good evening. I'm Scott Gates. I'm here for River's Edge. And I've got some kind of detailed comments, but I'll try and go through them as quickly as I can. I do some consulting work for the guys. I got involved with this just 30 days ago or so, and then did some digging as we went from there based on some input from Steve and some of their concerns. A real quick history, and anyone feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on these, but St. Croix County just completed a comprehensive amendment update of the zoning on a countywide level. That started in September of early 2017. Was approved about 4 years later. During that time, some of your documentation shows there's over 45 meetings that occurred with all the various stakeholders involved in that. This included public meetings, community development meeting, this board I presume, and along with the towns and villages. In November of 2019, St. Croix County repealed the existing Chapter 17 and reenacted it as the new amended zoning ordinance. At the same time, they also updated the zoning maps to include the R1, this parcel as R1 zoning. That was a pretty extensive process. It took a very long period of time, a couple of years, was reviewed in great detail with a lot of public comment. From that point in time, November 2019, it took until August 10th, I believe, of 2020 for the town to adopt the updated zoning. It appears they did that August 10th. They adopted the plan as is, showing R1 zoning on this parcel. The parcel to the north is R2. It's pretty clear that there's been an extensive opportunity to review all of these issues and concerns, and if there was an intent for this parcel to be R2, then it would have been and should have been addressed during that long-standing process. In May of 2020, the applicant submitted a proposed subdivision, and that application showed existing zoning as rural residential and proposed zoning as R1. This was also confirmed by a letter from Sarah with Community Development to them regarding their application. In September of 2020, the town, I believe it was the Planning Commission, reviewed the subdivision, approved a recommendation to move forward. The minutes noted at the time, after I brought up the issue and questioned on it, the development's in the process of being rezoned. However, that rezoning wasn't submitted until, as far as I can tell, September 23rd, sometime later. At that meeting and others, community members expressed strong opposition to the through street and to the higher density. They indicated that they bought their homes in reliance on the existing zoning that was in place. There was some discussion about the extension of the roadway, which really isn't our purpose here today, but that was a significant concern with them. The density and the roadway are also River's Edge concerns, the through connection and the increased density. The Star Prairie Comprehensive Plan I've read in great detail, and that plan also went through an extensive community involvement and public engagement process. There was a detailed survey, focus groups, that type of thing. The overwhelming, one of the top overwhelming observations out of that was that there was 80 to 90% support for conservation design type development, especially for environmentally sensitive and wildlife areas. This subject property deals with all of those. It has wetlands, designated waterfowl protection areas, environmentally sensitive corridor, and the like. The commercial property owner to the south, which would be us, River's Edge, had the same reasonable expectation as the residents did that this would be developed according to the comp plan, past history, to the input, strong input from the community when the comp plan was rezoned. Under rural residential, and with the current R1 residential, the density is 1 per 10 acre. I did notice that the rules appear to allow some transfer of density. This is 2 contiguous parcels. Where they're under common ownership, you can transfer some density from one parcel to the other. Theoretically, that would give, on a 71-acre combined parcel, about 7 dwelling units, and my understanding is the existing home on the westerly piece would be deducted from that. River's Edge has been in business, according to the comp plan for Star Prairie, for a century. The comp plan notes 1921. We didn't really realize that, but I guess we're going to have a 100-year celebration next year. The concert business, which is a fairly high-density use on a certain number of days per year, has a 30-year history going back into the 1980s. Metallica played there in 1994 to about 30,000 people. That business is ongoing. The Raleighs invested a lot of money and decades of their lives to build this property. Mr. Kaufman bought it here a couple years ago, has made significant investments. They've done some concerts already. That business will continue. The core business is the recreation business, the camping, the tubing on the Apple River. That has a 5-decade history or more. of providing recreation for people from across the world, including Charles Kuralt in the 1970s, and employment for youth. It's also one of the largest developers in Star Prairie. By my estimate or guess, it looks like it's the second or third largest employer. There was some comment, I believe, in the letter from the town that this was an oversight, that they missed in the whole long rezoning process with the county in the year that they took to review this and adopt the county plan, that there was some, that they just missed it. I think that's kind of ingenuous, in my personal opinion. When you have that extensive of a process, you have an application before you. The application was made in May of 2020, after the county had already adopted this. It's kind of ingenuous to come back after the fact once you've realized that the plan that was submitted doesn't work with the R1 zoning. The zoning that was approved by the town, a month earlier, in August of 2020. Our position is, and I believe it was the sentiment of the owners in the subdivision to the north, that these uses aren't compatible. We don't have any problem with this property being developed, as I'm a developer myself. Everybody is entitled to a correct and proper use per the ordinances of their property. This isn't that use. This isn't the use that was anticipated. This isn't the use that has been on the books. I believe the comp plan was 2010, last updated with the town. And this isn't the use. I happen to know Steve looked at the property and looked at it as a long-term hold, buy it for a buffer, try and prevent conflicts. And one of the things that he did was do a highest and best use review of it. There was a sketch drawn that showed similar type development as this. And when they reviewed the ordinance and the conflicts that it might create with their business, they said, this just doesn't work. This doesn't make sense. But, besides the strong sentiment for conservation design, which many communities call clustering. Clustering lets you take, rather than a strict, rigid, this many lots for this many acres, it allows you to work around natural amenities, protect features, waterfall protection areas, things like that, by allowing smaller lots. However, a key part of conservation design is that you take those features and you pull them out. They become common ownership, held for all. This design doesn't do that. The prior design that was submitted, this design doesn't do that as it's submitted. And this design, as it was originally submitted under the rural residential, required some minimum densities. They also had to be creative. I'll be nice. To get the minimum lot size requirement, even for what was here under the old zoning. They did that by including one very large lot and one 3.8 acre lot, I think it was, with the rest of them being an acre and a half. Between that and the fact that they do not separate and protect the higher value areas, it is not compatible with conservation design, in my opinion. Not with the intent of conservation design, nor with the clearly expressed wishes. I read through all of the survey documentation, 4 different focus groups, when the comp plan was amended. And again, it was very, very clear. I can provide some more detail, but you probably don't need it. The conflicts were the second issue that's addressed in the comprehensive plan. The town clearly identified in the comp plan that it's a rural area. They want to protect and preserve that rural environment. They also want to Their comp plan is directed to try and minimize conflicts. This commercial use, sometimes, part of the year, good share of the year, it's not a conflict, but for a good share of the year, it most definitely is a potential conflict. As a developer, what we do with these kinds of conflicts is try and create buffer areas. The county has also done that, I believe. I'm not sure that these guys have adopted it, but you use varying levels of density to buffer, for example, a high-density residential from a commercial development. If this rezoning is approved, we're extending higher density residential up right against the conflicting use of commercial. And that conflicting use has days where there is significant traffic on the roadway, that there is noise, there are things like that. We get into what I call the airports and airplanes issue. If you allow people to build next to an airport, pretty soon they're going to be complaining about airplanes, even though those airplanes might have been there for 30 years or 50 years or 100 years. And that's pretty much what's going to happen here. We know the typical buyer for these homes. A lot of them are coming from non-rural environments. I've developed a number of rural developments. My covenants say, you moved to the country for a reason. Don't call us when the farmer's spreading manure, when the tractor's going at 2 in the morning, or any of those things. That's why you moved to the country. But it doesn't eliminate the conflict. It simply puts them on notice. The R1 1 per 10 acre density does create a buffer. It allows reasonable development of the property under the rules that have been in place for years, while still minimizing the density and allowing minimizing the conflict. Just take a quick look. You know, I think that's the majority of it. Bottom line, both River's Edge and the neighbors have should be able to reasonably rely on what was in place at the time, and that should be a protection to them. And if this was intended to be R2, it should have and could have been addressed during the amendment process. Thanks.
Thank you. Your opinions are noted. Please state
Thank
your
you.
name.
I'm Steve Kaufman. I live in New Richmond, Wisconsin, at 1107 Circle Pine Drive. As Scott said earlier, I did buy the River's Edge and work with the Raleigh family closely. To go back and reiterate what he had said, that property had been on the market for 3 or 4 years, looked at by many other developers, including myself, and ultimately decided because it's R1, we'll continue that. We don't have a problem with 1 or 2 or 3 homes going there. Again, we're not against development. It wasn't going to be a big impact on my business, so we decided not to move any forward, as many others did, that should always be R1. If you look at the map, clearly the one and only driveway that comes out of that development dead ends at my property. That is probably our most sought after campsites right there. Everyone pitches their tent there, the families go there, and that's where they camp. Now, if you put 18 homes in there, times however, every one of those headlights is going to come out and shine onto our campers trying to enjoy their reasonable camping experience that they've been doing for, as Scott said, almost a century, for certainly a long, long time. Scott Counter is well aware that in the near future, Raleigh Road is going to be removed as an access point onto Highway 64. And until that happens, if that happens, we're going to have a bunch of issues back to this county board with these 18 homeowners trying to get onto Highway 64 while my customers are also there. The concerts that River's Edge has entered into a legal agreement with the county to host 10 outdoor events on an annual basis. It is very, very hard to get onto that Highway 64. So the likelihood of traffic all the way down to Raleigh Road, very high. Furthermore, the quick access into the expanding Somerset and the new Quick Trip and all of that is through our property. Scott will attest, we have no less than 200 cars a day through our private property because it's the shortcut. There's no other way across the river. Now, if you put 18 more homes there, they're all going to want to cut through as well. And we have families in there, we have kids in there, we have water park in there. It's been happening for 50 years. So I think we've made a strong enough point as to why R1 is the best and most, positive use for that and protecting everyone else's investments, including my own life investment into the river's edge. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming. All right, is there anybody else who'd like to speak to or against the rezoning? Thank you. Just step up to the microphone, introduce yourself.
My name is Derek Sinan. I live on Raleigh Road in New Richmond. So I do own property on the north side of the lots that's being talked about right now. And I would say I'm in favor of rezoning with the anticipation of that development being built with the extension of that 90th road coming through. My major concern is, my biggest concern is the safety that we see on Raleigh Road right now with the amount of traffic that we see from that north development coming all the way down, down through alongside the river. At the last county, or sorry, not the last county meeting, the township meeting, there's a lot of talk about how unsafe Raleigh Road is and how it was not designed for the amount of traffic that it sees today along the river, and the speed and the safety and all that, especially with the people, a lot of the lots on the Raleigh Road, the owners own property on both sides, on the east side and then the west side on the river, so we're crossing, being able to use both sides. But yeah, that's my biggest concern is whether it's developed, I should say whether it's rezoned or not, if it's developed, that road coming straight down. But I would say I'm in favor, as a property owner to the north, I'm in favor of the rezoning.
Thanks. Anybody else? I'd like your sheet, please. Thanks. Just give us your name and have at her.
I'm Bob Doder. I've lived on Raleigh Road for 29, 30 years. When the north development was first built or proposed or whatever, the road connecting to River's Edge Drive was supposed to happen when that first north development went in. And I don't really know what happened. 2008 came, things slowed down. So, of course, the traffic on Raleigh Road has just increased with the 32 houses or whatever they have there, with the 18 more going. I guess basically I'm just saying that the connecting road to River's Edge Drive really needs to go in there for safety concerns, for what was said in the early 2000s, and basically that's all I got to say. Okay.
Anybody else for or against? That being the case, I'll end the public hearing. John, do you have anything else? Oh. Ellen, do you have anything?
I did just point out, sorry. I have to get into the right document here. Apologies. Here we go. Here we go. Was mentioned by the first speaker, Mr. I'm sorry, Mr. Gates? Yeah. It is, if you go back, and John has already identified that, but in the town plan, the area in question, the area this property is on, is clearly identified as rural residential, and the exact, or future land use is identified as rural residential, which is what guides rezonings. And it does clearly state, medium to high density, small lot, rural residential development that is generally comprised of existing traditional residential subdivisions and new major subdivisions. Conservation design may be used in these areas to preserve environmentally sensitive resources. It is not required. So this is completely follows the town's comp plan. I would suggest that what future land use plan, but what the question was, the town, when they stated that they didn't address it, I think they were basically saying that they didn't change the existing zoning, but decisions on future zoning should be regulated by the town's comp plan and the future land use map, and this does match the future land use map. So I just wanted to make that one point clear. Thank you.
All right. That being that, we will end the public hearing, move into the business items, and I would look for a motion to approve business item number 1, approving the Murtha property.
I'll make a motion to recommend to the county board for John Murtha, the 5.95 acres to rezone from commercial to industrial, which would be C3 to I1.
I'd second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have any comments or questions? Judy, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, good.
Believe it or not, I don't have any questions.
No, you've just been so quiet. I'm just afraid we lost you. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right. It passes unanimously. So, moving on to the second business item, which is the Star Prairie property. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance for the town of Star Prairie to rezone 71.70 acres from R1 to R2 for Philip Villancourt, if I'm saying that right.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
Yeah, I got 2 concerns.
Okay, Judy, go ahead.
The first is, and maybe this was already answered, but under the previous zoning, not the new zoning, but the previous zoning, would this have been acceptable to have been done?
John will answer that.
So up until November of 2019, excuse me, the parcel was zoned rural residential under the Chapter 17 code, which does allow major subdivisions. As we went through our comprehensive zoning process, meeting with the towns, they did not indicate this as R2. We had a default zoning on this property as R1, and it stayed R1 because we didn't really hear otherwise from the town regarding that. So even though the comprehensive plan does support an R2 zoning, it didn't show up as R2 when we adopted the November 5th, 2019 zoning update. So what the applicant did is he came back with a rezoning, a standalone rezoning application, which they're entitled to do, and requested the R2 zoning, which they thought they would have had through our zoning update process. But because they didn't, we needed to analyze it as a standalone rezoning application. We look at the town comprehensive plan, the county comprehensive plan to make sure the request is consistent. So that was kind of the genesis of why we're here today.
Okay, but that doesn't answer my question. My question was, if we didn't have the new zoning, and this person came and wanted to do what they were doing, would that have been appropriate? Would that have also fit in with the old zoning? Am I making sense?
I'm just trying to understand if you're talking about the Chapter 17 zoning or the
No,
zoning that's been in place since
I'm talking
November.
about the previous zoning we had before we spent 4 years with new zoning.
Right. So,
However it was zoned in the previous zoning, would this have been an acceptable use if people had wanted to do it?
yes.
Okay, okay. That was much shorter than your first answer.
Sorry about that.
Other questions? Scott?
Just want to check, under the current, is this application, you have it down as Valencourt, is this changed possession, and if so, has there been any adjustments to the application, and if maybe it's not necessary? I'm just wanted to verify that.
So the application was submitted on September 22nd, and the owner on record at the date of application was Philip Valencourt. I don't know if it's changed or not. I haven't seen anything to the contrary.
It has changed.
So I don't necessarily know if that impacts anything or not.
Valencourt's not the owner of the property.
All right, sir, you'll have to not speak. You don't have the floor. We'll ask you to leave if you continue. All right, any other questions?
I guess it would be just a clarification to make sure that if we do this, that isn't an issue. If it's in, I just don't know. If the attorney could answer that. And
Well, we have a rezoning application which has been endorsed by the township and a staff recommendation by the county. It's gone through that entire process. If there's a new owner involved, that's nothing is coming forward. So that's something that we hadn't seen before at this committee.
I guess we have not had any correspondence with the new owner to withdraw or reconsider, so that's why we're moving forward. I guess we didn't know otherwise.
I would suggest that this committee can can continue to move forward however they choose to do so, and we can confirm later, and if there is a change in ownership, we confirm that they wanted to go forward. There is perhaps, we don't know, perhaps the new owner is contingent on this rezoning passing. It may not actually have sold, it may be a contingency, for instance, in which case, I think you have to go on what we have right now, and as staff, we will look into this. It is not finalized till it goes before the county board.
I have one more, okay.
Yeah,
Can
let me speak, Judy, real quick. As long as we're on this subject, I don't believe ownership has got anything to do with the zoning. Specifically, the process was started, the process has worked its way through to this point, and I think it's incumbent upon us to finish this process. Ownership is an entirely different legal matter, and that's not the purview of this committee. Go ahead, Judy.
Well, mine kind of contradicts what you said. I mean, I know there's some situations in smaller towns or villages where ownership benefits from the decisions we make. And I hope that's not the case in this situation.
Again, it's not going to be something that we are going to take into account when we make this decision. we're presented with the documents, which are legal documents in front of us, that we're going to make our decision based on what's in front of us. Everything that we've heard so far is hearsay, and that's not something that's going to weigh in, and I'd encourage you to not allow it to make your decision based upon hearsay. We're going to go on what the township has presented to us and what the county staff has presented to us, and that's what I'd encourage you to take into account. Otherwise, if you'd like to make a motion to table, but I don't believe that, personally, I don't believe that would be prudent based on what's in front of us. Ed, what do you think?
Ownership doesn't matter, to me, it doesn't matter because we're dealing with land here, not ownership. It either should be zoned or it shouldn't. It doesn't matter who it belongs to. One other comment I want to make is why I'm in favor of this, because I like joining 90th Street to Raleigh to River's Edge Drive. Connecting roads is always good. The dead-end subdivision or cul-de-sacs create a lot of issues, and if this was to go into a conservation design, more than likely that road wouldn't be built to connect the two.
I like putting this many properties into the tax base. So, anybody have any other thoughts or comments? All right, let's put her to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
Okay. And we have one abstention, one no, and 3 ayes. Motion passes. Thank you very much. We'll move on. We have a staff presentation from Carrie Weiss from UW-Madison Extension.
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. I'm going to just share my screen real quick with you if you don't mind. Thank you, Ken, for doing that. All right. Are we all able to see this? I think as mentioned, first, I just want to say thank you again to the committee and the supervisors for allowing me some time. I appreciate that, and I know Extension appreciates that as well. But my name is Carrie Weiss, and I am St. Croix and Polk County's community developer. And what I'd like to do tonight is just briefly sort of go over sort of what the organization looks like so that it can shed some light on my position and what you all have with me. But then likewise to speak about my plan of work and then give a little bit more depth as to the activities and things that I'm doing right now in St. Croix County and in Polk otherwise. So with that said, this is just sort of an overview of the organization. Extension is organized into various institutes, such as ag, such as youth development. Those are probably the most synonymous with Extension. I sit in the Community Development Institute, and there are 3 veins in that institute. We have organization and leadership development, we have local government development, and economic. So my area of expertise is organization and leadership. Prior to coming to Extension about a little over a year ago, I was in the K-12 setting where I served 17 years in the classroom and then 4 in administration. And my ed leadership training really helped prepare me to take that training to others. And so Extension kind of excites me in terms of being able to reach a broader audience and serve more people. So that's what you get with me, the ability to provide educational programming to assist leaders, communities, and organizations to realize their fullest potential. However, you do, when you get Extension, you get an entire group of, an entire statewide network of educators and specialists that can also support you. And so oftentimes I will reach out to other local government educators, my own fellow institute educators or economic educators, as well as state specialists who serve primarily, or house, I should say, out of UW, and then help to provide us with various supports that we otherwise maybe wouldn't have access to. So just to note, this is where I sort of fall in my area of expertise, but you do have access to the other veins. I can serve as a coordinator, conduit to those services as well. What does that mean? Well, this is what it means for me, my particular plan of work, and all educators have to create one of these. It's with the ability to sort of evaluate ourselves and to just sort of provide some more effectiveness for some outline. And so this is a real quick snapshot of it. This is what I hope to do, is to help our community to converge on issues or opportunities that they face. I want to note that my particular audience is nonprofit organizations and coalitions. These are the people that I primarily hope to serve, not to mean that I couldn't work with other agencies, but I sit in many meetings where I hear various agencies comment on that they're working on that issue. They already work with that family, and it just goes on and on and on. And so rather than hearing the echo effect, there sometimes just needs to be a person to take the lead to bring these organizations, these agencies together to converge on problems. And that's really what I would like to do and what I'm tasked to do as well. Typically in Extension, what we do is we provide educational programming. And so mine is a leadership training sort of program where I help leaders to work on informing their decision-making, using data to do so, to collect as much information, to have as much input as possible, helping to organize efforts to build systems or grow systems, help to increase perspective and or the input, sort of the voice that goes into that decision-making process, and then also monitoring and assessing activities. Other pointed services that I can provide, I do a lot of facilitation of meetings, of hearings, et cetera. I do strategic planning and grant writing, to name a few. What does this look like? These are some of the, some of the projects or activities that I'm currently involved in, just a short list. For example, Pierce St. Croix Cares is a coalition that I started to sit on about 1.5 years ago. And since that time, I've taken the lead on helping them to reorganize or refocus their efforts. So working on some organization and leadership training there. In New Richmond, I was asked to help at the Freedom Park Center. Thus far, I've done some support with some presentation materials, and we are looking at a community needs assessment as well as some strategic planning in that project. I sit on Healthier Together, where, as mentioned, as a administrator in pupil services and special ed in particular, school-based mental health was a huge endeavor that was on the cusp of becoming a major sort of undertaking when I left. And I'm working right now to help districts sort of coordinate their efforts so that they can become more proficient in attacking this issue, and making certain that we provide equitable resources throughout all of St. Croix and other areas. Likewise, I help to also sit on, they have a health equity strategy, and that is just starting up. So I'm not really certain what that's going to look like in particular, but I am going to be throwing my efforts there as well. Interesting is something called a design charrette. Last year, I helped in Amory. In Amory, we actually got postponed due to COVID. But what this really means is a charrette is just basically a huge collaboration. And in this particular instance, it's of design for the city. And communities like Amory and Somerset have inquired about this. And it works really well for them, as many of them don't have city planners. And so they're looking for ways to vision out and or grow a plan for their respective communities. As mentioned, Amory was postponed. We aren't certain when those efforts will reconvene. And Somerset, likewise, we pressed pause because their ask was before COVID. We will look to hopefully reunite with them as well. Currently, I'm sitting on a statewide cohort to build a nonprofit curriculum to help nonprofits, particularly in times of crisis. The impetus behind this was COVID. Once again, it was with the intent that we could help those nonprofits prevail? What do they need to know, but more so, how do they need to network in order to maintain through crisis? In my Polk County, I helped with the board prioritization, sort of their planning process. We did this in a crunch. It was on a fast-tracked pace. Out of that, though, and helping them really come to consensus as to what they wanted to work on, we also came to find that they wanted some board orientation and some further training. So we're helping to support in that way as well. Other things that I'm really passionate about, culturally relevant practices, putting that into my workshop as well so that we can see all voices and we can have all perspectives sort of understood. And other sort of technical support that I've been involved in is the census. I helped to send out materials to our local school districts so they could disseminate information to their families about the importance, sort of educating about the needs of the census. And then on a very small note, with all the recent COVID aid for small business, Extension took a role in helping to provide letters of support to small businesses who were applying for aid. And so my institute took sort of initiative in that. And so I had a lesser role in that, sort of sending out those letters as needed and being a part of that decision-making process to move forward. In all, what I really hope to bring to St. Croix County, as I said, is to be a community organizer or a conduit between those stakeholders. When we want to, and we hear those echo effects in our room, in the room that we're working in, and we hear people say, I work without that group. I hear this problem time again. I also do, and so forth. Sometimes you just need to have one person take the lead and organize all of those voices on a problem. And that's what I would like to be. I see that then as maybe more of a community energizer. I could also be a project manager. I see myself as an information resource, whether that be from the university information that we have coming out of the university, or just if you need digging, I can try to find those answers for you in those times of need. And basically, my underlying goal is to empower the St. Croix community members by which to take on and channel their energies to focus on the issues in their community, to address them by themselves. That is what I had for you today. I don't know if there are questions, comments, clarification.
Any questions?
I just have one comment that you must be a very busy person.
Sometimes it feels that way. Yes, thank you.
It's a nice presentation, Carrie. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our financial report. Ken Witt.
Switching the screen share over so we can look at the financial data. This financial report goes through September, so we're 75% of the way through the year. I don't know that I have a lot to point out in relation to this. Everyone's staying on budget. We've done some cost saving measures earlier in the year, so that's really helped everyone stay on budget, and we really haven't seen a decrease in revenues that we would have expected to see through a recession. Quite frankly, some of our services, like the parks that we have up here, have seen greater growth because people aren't able to travel elsewhere, so they're staying local. So we have good revenues in the Parks Department, and expenses are staying on track through some of the things that we've done to keep costs in check. So I don't have any red flags to point out in the financial statements this month. Are there any questions by any supervisors?
Of course. Curiosity, on page 58, number 52116, the consultant fees for the register of deeds. What do they use a consultant for?
Yeah, they have a special project that they've been working on for a number of years now. They're taking old records and that were handwritten and pulling the data out there so that it's searchable. So they're making those older records searchable. They got through most of them. They're really just wrapping this project up, but I don't know. The Register of Deeds, Beth Paps has been working on this project for probably a good 6 to 8 years.
Yeah. But that's what they're using for the consultant?
Yes. Yep, they have a third party that is doing that. We actually had an employee
Oh,
on staff
okay.
that did it
Right,
for
I-
a number of years. And then when we got close to the, this was all grant funded, this is still grant dollars they're using. When we got close to the end of the pot of money, that person that we had on staff had left. So instead of hiring somebody new that we would only have for like a year or 2 years, we decided to go to a consultant basis so that we didn't have to lay somebody off.
Okay. And should I just go on with all my questions or see if anybody, I'm going to go on with the second one on page 62. Under parks. I love that 67,800%. What was the donation that we apparently weren't expecting?
Ellen would like to take this one.
If you will recall, the Zappa swap purchase and that complicated thing, if you recall, Mr. Zappa came to a county board meeting right before the shutdown, and he donated $339,000 to be used only at Eckerd Blufflands County Park for development of that new park.
God, it'd be nice if that happened every year.
I do think this is probably the largest donation in the county's park history at any rate, and I don't know about other things, but probably doesn't happen very often. So.
And the quirky thing, I mentioned it the other day too on page 64 for the fairgrounds. It says September year-to-date 60,000. That's total. We don't have 20,000 remaining because we changed that, so it was just 60,000.
Correct. You had authorized the payment this year of 60,000 instead of the full budgeted amount. So there will not be any additional payments.
Okay, but that doesn't say that. That's just why I was.
It doesn't. We didn't do that as a budget amendment. We really did it as a invoice authorization.
Okay. And oh, I got one last question about this on page 67. It's under 53910, other supplies and expenses. I bet you told us, but I can't remember what we got that cost us 10,000 more than what we budgeted for.
The way that works, Judy, is that that's the line item we use for a few random things, but we also specifically use it for the tree and plant sale. And so when revenues are up for the tree and the sales of the tree and plant sale are up, then our revenues will be up. And then even if we budget and anticipate the tree and plant sale would be 10,000 more than last year, or would be the same as last year, about 25,000, and we sold $35,000 worth, and so then we have to pay for our price for it, but we more than cover it because we sell slightly higher to have a little bit of operating costs and staff costs covered.
Yeah, I got some comments about that, but that comes later in the packet. So thank you very, very much, all of you, answering my questions.
Does anybody else have a question about financial report? I don't. I don't. I knew that was Mr. Zappa's donation. Oh, I asked last time.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you need a motion to approve that? No?
Nope.
It's just
That's
a statement?
informational.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I add one thought?
Yep.
I would just like to say thank you to Ken and I'm surprised Judy didn't mention it, but that when the revenues are over the budgeted amounts, they're now showing up in green, which is really nice. Thank you.
All right.
I definitely noticed.
We call that the Achterhoff effect.
The Achterhoff effect. Not to be confused with the Doppler effect. That's what we started with. All right, and no more jokes. We're going to do, our next business item is called the Community Development Department Annual Report Feedback. And when we had our annual report listed at the county board meeting, it got cut short. And I asked to have this on this agenda because I wanted to give you, the committee members, an opportunity to ask Ellen any questions about this annual report. If you had any comments or whatever, Community Development Department, in myself, your chairperson's opinion, had a stellar year in 2019. And I thought it was a shame that we didn't have the opportunity to sing their praises at the county board level. So if you had any opportunity, or you wanted to take the opportunity here to highlight anything that you're especially proud of or ask any questions of Ellen, I wanted to give you that chance. So the microphone is yours, committee, have at it. Any questions or thoughts?
Oh, come on. I have a few. No one else does?
Judy, the floor is yours.
Page 75. I just have some questions out of curiosity. Who does the grants? Because community development does a huge number of grants. And does one person kind of oversee everything, or is each grant individual depending on what it's being used for?
Well, grants are a team effort, Judy.
Okay.
I oversee everything, but they are done by various staff who write the grants, and there's a lot of staff. For instance, the recycling grant is written by the resource management administrator and also the recycling specialist. The targeted runoff grants, the lake protection grant, those are all written by, again, resource management with various staff, such as Kyle Kulo, working with them to do that. The stewardship grants have been written by our planner, in some cases, or by John, our senior planner, our planner being Tammy Traxler. Things like the Wildwood Trail Rehabilitation Grant, that was written by one of our park staff. The McKnight Foundation one is covered by Kyle Kulo, again, from our resource management team. Snowmobile is totally done by one of our staff in parks.
Okay, so they're done by various people.
They are, and then I just would add that the people who track them and help do the reports are those staff, but also very heavily involved is Julie and our financial associate, who makes sure that all the financial paperwork gets tracked. We keep separate records. Each of these grants has a separate code that we do in conjunction working with Ken and his financial team. And so we track everything. We have to put in extensive reports with canceled checks, tracking spreadsheets, forms filled out for the state. This is an ongoing annual every year, even when they're, as you can see, there's a lot of annual grants. We do that paperwork every single year. We write applications every single year, plus then the multi-year grants. And so does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
And then, out of curiosity, has anybody ever kept track to see what percentage of grants are approved and what percent are disapproved? That's just a question of curiosity from me.
I haven't ever tracked it on paper, but I can tell you that almost all of our grants get approved.
Wow,
We've never had an annual grant, to my knowledge, denied. Our multi-year grants are pretty much all approved. For instance, it was a big deal for us a couple years ago when our TAP grant was denied, but then the second go-around for this year, our TAP grant was approved. John Hilders wrote that and did a fantastic job.
That is excellent. I don't think everybody could say that. So,
I don't know.
Next, what exactly, I should know this from being on community development so long. What exactly is well abandonment?
For instance, if you need to put a new well in at your property, then there's a proper way to abandon your existing well. Wells don't just get ignored. They are a conduit to our groundwater. We have numerous wells out there, from what we call shallow wells that were perhaps created during homesteading times. There are many wells that are in fields. There's a lot of ways to spot them. and we encourage farmers to properly abandon them. We offer cost share. One of the things we've done with some of the money that you see as fund balance applied in the last few years is aggressively pursue, because we never have enough money from the cost share from the state of Wisconsin. So we've aggressively pursued it with some fund balance from St. Croix County to get more of those open wells that are out there in fields and old home sites. I'm sure, Judy, you could probably identify half a dozen old home sites that no longer have people there.
Ah,
And
yep.
they probably have an abandoned well that is right now a conduit to poison our groundwater. So we try to work with people and spread it. We actually have planned for this coming year a big media push to try to get more people. We've got some ideas on, we're going to use social media outreach and try to really push even harder to get even more of those cleared. There's a lot of them out there.
And I got one last question, believe it or not. Page 85, your goals and objectives for 2020.
Yes.
What has been accomplished and or working on, and what has not had much done? Can you, without taking all
everything
time?
that's on that list is either done or in process and will be done.
Wow. Woo.
It's kind of easy.
Excellent.
I hate and I love the fact that we always are the last set of departments to do our annual report, because one of the things I can do for my goals and objectives, although we already know what they're going to be because we're always working on them, but I can pretty much list all the things that we've accomplished because we're in the midst of doing them.
Thank you.
Who else has a question or
I should know this, but camper cabins, where are we on those? I know there's some scheduled, is it next
We
year?
have the one at Osceola that's being moved right now. We have a second one. We actually just signed a contract to have the second one constructed. And we have in the KIP to start working on this. These are what we call the trial cabins that are at our existing campground. The peninsula one, it's on the peninsula, I guess the lakeside we call it. But the other ones are opening up a new area of the park, and those are in the KIP to start doing them. There's 9 planned with the idea of doing them in stages. Yep.
anything? Not yet? Okay. So it's the very best of all the annual reports, and it's, I think reading your annual report helped me be a better county board supervisor when I first got elected, because it helped me understand how hard it is to do your job. And I really appreciate what you do and how hard you work. So, and what the heck is drastic? Tell me what drastic is to well management and water resources. Do you remember? Because I wanted to put you on the spot and I wanted to stump you.
You are absolutely accomplishing that. Drastic is an acronym. The DRASTIC all has a meaning. Shoot, I think it's in my last year's. It's very clearly stated what it all means in last year's report, because we were working on it. It is a software program that one of our interns actually developed while she was in college, and then she adapted it while she was working for us as an intern, and it provides a different viewpoint and a different perspective. If Julie has a second or two, are you working on it? Okay, because it's on our website, the map, there's a little story map on our website that tells the story of what the drastic program does and shows what it accomplished. And
Ken might be able to pull that up.
okay, it's okay, but it is on our website, on our
But,
web.
but I
It's
can
on our
defi-
maps
but I can
page.
tell you what it stands for.
Thank you.
It's depth to water recharge, aquifer media, soil media, topography, impact of the Vadnos zone, hydraulic conductivity.
It was highly technical. I can tell you that when I sat down with our intern at one point and talked to her, she was so excited to put it on the website. And my advice on every single step of her PowerPoint was, okay? It's got to be simplified into layman's terms, because it was highly technical. She left us to go on to get her master's degree at U of M, so,
I know I was impressed with her.
okay.
Okay, I just thought I'd try to stump you. Thank you.
All right, I did have a couple things I wanted to share with you guys, just kind of goes along. These are things that if I had gotten them a little earlier, I probably would have put them in the annual report. And I would just add for Judy's edification that Judy, the things we accomplished are our goals for 2020. I did have to limit it to 1 page. Otherwise, I actually had another half a page worth of stuff, FYI. So I just thought I would share this. I'm going to send a couple down, and actually, I don't have it. I'm going to just have you see if you can put it on the screen. So this is just information for you. It's a map that our staff have created that shows the unimproved lots as of the end of 2019 in St. Croix County. And it shows them by town, and we have a total for all rural towns. These are unincorporated lots, okay, not in the cities and villages. We have a total of 2,128 open, undeveloped lots in St. Croix County and the rural areas. And I point that out because development is very important. It helps drive our numbers, as you heard at the Committee of the Whole meeting. And one of the things that we do like to see development, and we are constantly supporting that. But I would just point out that depending on how you calculate this based on the rate of growth that we've seen over the last 3 years, we have anywhere from, I'll just find my number, from 9 to 16 years of development, even if we never plat another lot, potential. And then I have one other document. I would just want to, again, this is going to be, this is just a quick look at, and this document talks about St. Croix County's replacement systems in the county, replacement septic systems. If you noticed in our annual report, the number of replacement septic systems is getting larger and larger compared to the new systems. On one of the charts, it's on page 5, and it is green and blue, St. Croix County rural sanitary permits issued by year, and it's been growing, and this is our highest year ever. And so my only point about this is that replacements, you know, we've been developing in this county since the 80s, even since the 70s, and those systems are getting old, and now that's going to be an even bigger part, and we will continue to see new development, but we're also going to have to put resources toward monitoring and managing the old development and the replacements, and the numbers are really growing, and that's another reason why I'm going to need more staff. So I'm going to end on that high note. Okay? Thank you.
I'm going to add one more comment about the staff bit, is that we have a lot more new parks.
Yes.
We don't have any new I mean, we have to make sure we maintain and keep up the parks so that when all these new and extra people, I don't know if those are the right terms, are coming to utilize, that they leave with a positive impression.
Yep.
Instead of saying, boy, what a dump that was. So we have to make sure we have enough help to keep the parks up. And I think that's an important thing for St. Croix County.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That was a really nice thing to do, to go over that. It was a great report. Announcements and correspondence.
I have one.
Ellen has one.
Please turn on your microphone.
I'm sorry. I just want to say before I announce this that this is not something we can discuss. It's not on the agenda. I just thought you should be made aware of it. So as of last week, Thursday, the town of St. Joseph adopted an interim zoning ordinance to preserve existing land uses within the town of St. Joe. In effect, this ordinance that goes into effect tomorrow is a moratorium on all development in the town for up to the next 2 years. And it is a moratorium on all development, not only related to zoning, but also building permits, land use subdivisions, and et cetera. They did allow for an exception for an additional fee and a meeting before the town board, and that's just sort of something you guys should be aware of as it relates to development. There will probably be developers in the community, in the area, who will be very concerned and might contact you. But it's not something that we have authority over. We're just simply dealing, it's a town decision. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
I got one more thing too. Everybody in their emails, they must have gotten something about that May-Tober sale from Smith Auctions for the fairgrounds. And there's only, I believe, 2 items left: sporting goods and firearms, and entertainment services, equine and miscellaneous. So please try and get, if you get a chance, get onto Smith Auctions, check your email. It tells you exactly how to do it and where to go. Be appreciated.
Thanks, Judy. Any other announcements or correspondence? How about requests for future agenda items? Just call them in, send an email. All right, the date of the next meeting, I believe, is November 19th. Julie, is that right? Yeah, I think so. And with that, I will call it. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks for coming.